If you marry her, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The voice rang out across the vineyard, sharp and desperate, cutting through the gentle music of the pre-wedding cocktail hour. Guests turned, champagne glasses frozen halfway to lips. Bridesmaids gasped. Someone dropped a plate. Tund Ogonalai stood at the edge of the terrace, breathing hard, his best man's suit jacket askew, his eyes wild with something between fear and fury. He pointed directly at the groom standing by the fountain, his best friend, his brother in everything but blood. "Kayode," Tund's voice cracked. "Brother, please listen to me." Kayode Adeyemi turned slowly, his handsome face a mask of barely controlled anger. "Tund, not here, not now." "Then when?" Tund moved forward, desperation making him reckless. "After you sign your life away, after it's too late." Security guards were already moving in, guests whispering, the perfect wedding moment fracturing like glass. Welcome to Story by TJ, where we bring you real stories about real people facing impossible choices. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 24 hours earlier, everything had been perfect. Almost suspiciously perfect. Kayode Adeyemi stood on the balcony of his penthouse suite at the Transcorp Hilton, looking out over Abuja's glittering skyline, and allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow, he would marry Zainab Bello, the woman he loved, the woman who'd stood by him as he built his empire from nothing. Tomorrow, his life would be complete. "When the drum sounds too sweet," his grandmother's voice whispered in his memory, "the dance may end in tears." He pushed the thought away. Old superstitions, village wisdom that had no place in his modern life. Kayode was 33 years old and had already accomplished what most men dreamed of their entire lives. The journey from Mushin, where he'd grown up sharing a single room with 7 siblings, to this penthouse had been brutal, exhausting, and absolutely worth it. Adeyemi Tech Solutions had revolutionized digital banking across West Africa. His face graced magazine covers. Forbes had called him the boy who built an empire from code and determination. Politicians courted him. Competitors feared him. And tomorrow, he would marry a woman who understood the cost of his success because she'd witnessed the climb. Zainab Bello, beautiful, elegant, connected. Daughter of Senator Bello, educated in London, sophisticated in ways Kayode was still learning to navigate. She'd entered his life 3 years ago at a charity gala, and from that first conversation, he'd been captivated. She'd looked past his rough edges, the accent he couldn't quite polish out, the way he still ate with his hands when he thought no one was watching, the moments when the boy from Mushin showed through the billionaire's veneer. She'd seen him, or so he'd believed. His phone buzzed, a text from Zainab. "Can't sleep, too excited. Tomorrow we become forever. I love you, my king." Kayode smiled, typing back. "Tomorrow and every day after. I love you too." But even as he sent it, that whisper of his grandmother's voice returned. "When a thing seems too perfect, child, look for the crack in the calabash." The wedding was set to be the social event of the year. Kayode had spared no expense, not to show off, but because Zainab deserved perfection. They'd chosen a private vineyard 2 hours outside Abuja, sprawling acres of green overlooking a cliff that dropped down to the sea. White tents billowed like clouds. Flowers imported from 3 countries created cascades of color. A live orchestra would play during the ceremony, a full band during the reception. 400 guests. Governors, senators, tech moguls, international investors, Nollywood stars, musicians whose songs topped charts across the continent. The creme de la creme of Nigerian society, all gathered to witness the union of Kayode Adeyemi and Zainab Bello. The golden couple, as the media had dubbed them, the self-made billionaire and the senator's daughter, the love story that proved class barriers could be crossed when love was real. But in African folktales, Kayode's grandmother had taught him, the most beautiful paths often led to the darkest forests. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, too perfect. Kayode woke early in his suite, already feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. Not anxiety about marriage, he was certain about Zainab, but something else. Something he couldn't name, like a note played slightly off-key in an otherwise perfect symphony. His phone showed dozens of messages, well-wishes from business partners, family, friends. But one message stood out, sent at 3:47 a.m. From Tund. "Brother, I need to talk to you. Before the wedding, please, it's important." Kayode frowned. Tund Oganalai had been his best friend since their days at the University of Lagos, when they'd shared a cramped apartment and survived on Gary and determination. Tund had been there for every milestone, the first successful pitch, the first ₦1,000,000, the first international contract. He was the best man, the brother Kayode had chosen rather than been born with. But lately, Tund had been distant. Whenever Zainab's name came up, his expression would close off. He'd make excuses to leave early when she joined them, and once, memorably, he'd asked, "Bro, are you sure she's the one?" Kayode had brushed it off as overprotectiveness. Tund had always been cautious, analytical, slow to trust. It was what made him a brilliant lawyer, but it also made him see threats where none existed. Still, the 3:47 a.m. message nagged at him. Kayode called, no answer. He tried again, nothing. Finally, a text came through. "Meet me at the oak tree behind the main tent. 11 a.m. Before you get ready. Please, Kayode, trust me." Kayode checked the time, 9:23 a.m. The ceremony was at 4 p.m. He had time. The vineyard was already buzzing with activity when Kayode arrived. Wedding planners barked orders into headsets. Florists made last-minute adjustments. Caterers set up elaborate stations. Musicians sound-checked. And everywhere, in every detail, was evidence of the life he'd built. The life he was about to seal with vows. "Mr. Adeyemi," the wedding planner, a brisk woman named Mrs. Okonkwo, intercepted him with a clipboard. "You're not supposed to be wandering around. You should be getting ready. And you absolutely cannot go near the bridal suite. Bad luck." "I'm just taking a walk," Kayode assured her, "clearing my head." "Clear it in your suite," she ordered, but softened with a smile. "This is your day, sir. Everything will be perfect, I promise." Perfect, that word again. Kayode nodded and headed toward the oak tree, the ancient giant that had stood on this land for over 200 years, its branches spreading like ancestral wisdom over the manicured grounds. Tund was already there, packing, his usually neat appearance disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept. Finally, Tund breathed when he saw Kayode. Thank God. "What's going on?" Kayode asked, concern replacing irritation. "Are you okay? You look." "I'm not okay." Tund's voice was tight. "And you won't be either once you hear what I have to say." Something in his tone made Kayode's stomach drop. "Tund." "Just listen, please." Tund ran a hand over his face. "I didn't want to do this. I've been trying to find another way, trying to convince myself I was wrong, but I can't stay silent anymore. Not when," he stopped, gathering himself. "Kayode, you can't marry Zainab." The words hung in the air like an accusation. "Excuse me." Kayode's voice dropped dangerously low. "I know how this sounds. I know you think I'm jealous or overprotective or—" "You're damn right that's what I think." Anger flared, hot and protective. "The day before my wedding you want to what? Plant doubts, sabotage my happiness." "Your happiness?" Tund's laugh was bitter. "Brother, you don't have the full picture. She's not who you think she is." "Stop." Kayode's hand came up. "I don't want to hear this." "You need to hear this." Tund's voice rose. "I've been investigating." "Investigating?" The word was acid. "My fiancé, you've been investigating the woman I'm going to marry." "Because I love you, you stubborn fool." Tund's composure cracked completely. "Because I've known you since we were broke students eating one meal a day, and I'll be damned if I watch you walk into a trap without warning you." "A trap?" Kayode's voice was ice now. "That's what you think my marriage is, a trap?" "Yes." The word burst out of Tund like a confession. "Kayode, she doesn't love you. She loves your money, your status, your name. I have proof." "I don't want your proof." Kayode turned away. I want you to be my best man and support my marriage. Can you do that? Silence stretched between them, heavy with all the years of friendship now balanced on a knife's edge. No, Tund said finally, his voice breaking. No, I can't stand beside you and watch you make the biggest mistake of your life. Kayode turned back slowly. Then don't stand beside me at all. The words hit like a physical blow. Tund's face went pale. Kayode. Get out. Kayode's voice was quiet, final. Get out of my wedding, get out of my sight. And maybe when I'm back from my honeymoon we can talk, but right now, I don't want to see you. Brother, please. Gio. The shout echoed across the vineyard, sending birds scattering from the oak tree's branches. Staff members turned to look. In the distance, someone dropped a glass. Tund stood frozen for a moment, tears running down his face, then turned and walked away. Kayode watched him go, his hands shaking with rage and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like doubt. But no, Tund was wrong, had to be wrong. This was just pre-wedding nerves, a friend who couldn't handle change, jealousy disguised as concern. Zainab loved him. He knew she did. When your friend speaks truth you don't want to hear, his grandmother's voice whispered. The silence afterward will teach you everything. The afternoon blurred past in a haze of preparation. Kayode was dressed in his wedding attire, a custom three-piece suit in deep midnight blue with gold threading that caught the light, a nod to his Yoruba heritage combined with modern elegance. His groomsmen, minus Tund, whose absence felt like a missing tooth, adjusted their ties and told jokes he barely heard. The guests were arriving. The orchestra was playing. Everything was moving forward with the smooth precision of an event that had cost more than most Nigerians earned in a lifetime. But Kayode couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. At 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the ceremony, he found himself walking through the main house, a restored colonial building that served as the vineyard's centerpiece. He was supposed to be in the groom's suite, waiting for his cue. But his feet moved of their own accord, drawn by instinct or fate or that ancestral whisper he'd been trying to ignore all day. The bridal suite was on the second floor, off-limits to everyone except Zainab and her inner circle. Mrs. Okonkwo had been very clear. Tradition dictated the groom couldn't see the bride until she walked down the aisle. But as Kayode passed the hallway leading to that suite, he heard something that stopped him cold. Laughter. High, bright, unmistakable laughter coming from behind a door that was slightly ajar. And then Zainab's voice, not loving, not bride-like, but sharp with amusement and something cruel. Can you imagine? He actually thinks I love him. More laughter from multiple voices. Kayode's feet moved forward without conscious thought, drawn toward that crack in the door, toward the sound of his world ending in giggles and gossip. I mean, he's sweet, Zainab continued, her voice carrying clearly. But God, the way he eats. Still uses his hands. Another voice chimed in, Balinal, one of the bridesmaids. Like a bush boy, Zainab agreed, and the contempt in her voice was a knife. My father said, marry him, he's rich, we can mold him. So here I am, about to become Mrs. Adeyemi, queen of the technology empire, and you still seeing Ahmed? A third voice asked, Kioma, Zainab's cousin. A pause, then deliberately casual. What Kayode doesn't know won't hurt him. The laughter that followed was like broken glass. Kayode stood frozen in the hallway, his hand gripping the wall for support, his entire reality fracturing around him like thin ice giving way beneath his feet. Girl, you're terrible, Balinal said, but she was laughing. I'm practical, Zainab corrected. Ahmed is exciting, Kayode is. Secure, a prince for my heart, a king for my bank account. It's called strategy, ladies. What if he finds out? He won't. Zainab's voice was confident, dismissive. Men like Kayode, men who came from nothing, they're so grateful to be accepted by people like us that they never question their luck. He thinks I'm a gift, and I am, just not the kind he thinks. More laughter, the sound drilling into Kayode's skull. How long you planning to keep this up? Kioma asked. Until I'm bored, or until he stops being useful, or Zainab paused dramatically. "Until I get pregnant with Ahmed's baby and convince Kayode it's his." The women shrieked with scandalized laughter. And something inside Kayode, something that had been holding his world together, simply snapped. He stood in that hallway, hand still on the wall, vision blurring, listening to the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd trusted with his dreams and his heart and his future. Reducing him to a punchline. A bush boy, a meal ticket, a fool so grateful for acceptance that he'd never question his luck. Every memory rewrote itself in cruel clarity. The times she'd corrected his grammar in front of friends, the way she'd helped him choose clothes because his taste was too Lagos, the subtle comments about his family that he'd ignored because he'd thought she was joking. The way she'd never once visited his mother in Mushin, always had excuses, always suggested they meet his family at nicer venues. The phone calls she'd take in another room, the weekends she was too busy to see him, the expensive trips with her girlfriends that he'd funded without question. You fool, he thought. You blind, grateful, desperate fool. Tund had tried to warn him. His friend, his brother, had tried to save him from this moment, and Kayode had thrown his love back in his face. In the bridal suite, Zainab was still talking. "Anyway, enough about my future. Let's get me into this ridiculously expensive dress and go collect my billionaire. Balinal, where's my phone? I need to text Ahmed one last time before I'm off the market, at least officially." Laughter, always that laughter. Kayode turned and walked away on legs that felt like water. He made it to a private bathroom before his knees gave out. He gripped the marble sink, staring at his reflection. The suit worth $2 million, the gold cufflinks engraved with their initials, the face of a man who just discovered his entire life was a lie. What do I do? Cancel the wedding. Expose her now in front of everyone, turn this day into a spectacle of shame. Walk away quietly, disappear, let her face the guests alone and wonder where he'd gone. Or walk down that aisle, stand at that altar, and when the officiant asked if anyone had reason to object, give the truth its voice. Have you ever ignored a warning because love blinded you? Kayode stood at the altar, his face a perfect mask of composure. 400 guests watched him with anticipation. The orchestra played softly. White rose petals lined the aisle. The sea breeze carried the scent of expensive perfume and possibility. No one suspected that the groom's heart had turned to stone an hour ago. The music shifted, the bride's entrance. Everyone stood, turning toward the back of the venue where Zainab would appear. And there she was. Stunning in a custom Vera Wang gown that cost more than most Nigerians earned in 5 years, her makeup flawless, her smile radiant. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Senator Bello beaming with pride, completely unaware that his daughter's performance was about to be interrupted. Zainab's eyes found Kayode's, and she smiled. That same smile she'd given him 1,000 times, the one he'd thought was love but now recognized as something else entirely. Victory, calculation, the satisfaction of a plan coming together. She reached the altar. Senator Bello kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Kayode's. Her fingers were cold despite the warm afternoon. "You look beautiful," Kayode said quietly, playing his part. "You look perfect," she replied, squeezing his hand. "My king." The words that had once made his heart soar now felt like mockery. The officiant, an elderly pastor who'd known Kayode's grandmother, began the ceremony with a prayer. Then came the readings, the songs, the rituals that transformed two individuals into one unit. And then, the moment Kayode had been waiting for. "If anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony," the pastor's voice rang out over the silent crowd. "Speak now, or forever hold your peace." The traditional pause. No one ever spoke during this part. It was ceremonial, a formality, a relic from another era. Kayode took a breath and stepped back from Zainab. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Zainab's smile faltered. "Kayode." "I have something to say," he announced, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent venue. The pastor looked startled. My son, this isn't quite. I object, Kayode said simply. To this marriage, to this woman, to this lie. The silence was absolute. Then chaos erupted, gasps, exclamations, phones coming out to record what was clearly about to become the scandal of the year. Zainab's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. Kayode, what are you doing? What I should have done when my best friend warned me. Kayode's voice was calm, almost conversational, which somehow made it more devastating. Tun tried to tell me, he knew, and I threw his love back in his face because I was so desperate to believe in you. I don't know what you think you heard, Zainab started, her voice rising in panic. You called me a bush boy, Kayode interrupted, his eyes never leaving hers. You told your bridesmaids that I eat with my hands like I'm uncivilized. You said your father told you to marry me because I'm rich and you could mold me into something acceptable. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Senator Bello had gone rigid in his seat. That's not, you're twisting. Zainab's perfect composure was cracking. You told them about Ahmed, Kayode continued relentlessly. About how he's for your heart and I'm for your bank account. About your plan to get pregnant with his child and convince me it's mine. Zainab's face drained of all color. Several bridesmaids looked like they wanted to disappear into the ground. A prince for your heart, a king for your bank account, Kayode quoted her exactly. Those were your words. I heard them, through your half-open door, while you laughed about how grateful I am, how men like me, who come from nothing, never question our luck when someone like you accepts us. The silence now was different, heavy with shock and judgment. Zainab's eyes filled with tears, whether genuine or performative, Kayode no longer cared to determine. Please, she whispered. Kayode, please don't do this. We can talk about this privately. The way you talked about me privately, his voice hardened. The way you mocked everything I am with your friends. No, you wanted a public wedding to seal your victory. You'll get a public truth instead. He turned to face the crowd, these 400 people who'd come expecting a celebration. I loved her, he said simply. I would have given her everything, not just my money, but my trust, my future, my name. I thought she loved me too. I was wrong. And I'd rather stand here alone and humiliated but honest than spend my life married to a beautiful lie. He looked back at Zainab one final time. You can keep the ring. Consider it payment for teaching me that not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. With that, Kayode Adeyemi walked down the aisle, away from the altar, away from the woman he'd thought would be his wife, away from the life he'd imagined. The crowd parted for him like a sea. Behind him, Zainab's sobs echoed across the vineyard, along with her father's furious voice and her mother's wailing. But Kayode didn't look back. The ear that hears truth may bleed, his grandmother had said, but the heart is saved. His ears were bleeding, his heart was shattered. But for the first time in months, he could breathe. The aftermath was nuclear. By the time Kayode reached his car, the video had already gone viral. Kayode wedding exposure was trending. News outlets were scrambling for statements. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. He turned it off, got in his car, and drove. He drove through the night, away from Abuja, away from the vineyard, away from everything he'd built. The sun rose over unfamiliar roads. His fuel gauge dropped toward empty. His expensive wedding suit wrinkled and creased. He didn't care. When the car finally ran out of fuel, he found himself in a small coastal town he'd never heard of, Ife Seaside, according to the weathered sign. The kind of place tourists missed, where life moved slower, where the sea whispered instead of roared. An elderly woman sweeping the porch of a small inn looked up as he approached on foot, having abandoned the car a mile back. You look like a man who needs silence, she observed. Yes, Ma, Kayode said, his voice rough from not speaking for hours. I have a room, clean, quiet, no questions. Thank you. She studied him with eyes that had seen decades of human folly. Heartbreak or betrayal? Both. She nodded, as if this made perfect sense. The sea heals both in time. Come. Kayode followed her inside, into a space that smelled of salt air and old wood. into silence that felt like medicine after so much noise. His phone was off. His life was in ruins. His name was trending for all the wrong reasons. But in this small room overlooking the sea, with sunlight filtering through simple curtains, Kayode Adeyemi finally let himself fall apart. And in falling apart, began the slow process of putting himself back together. 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, the world wouldn't stop talking about Kayode Adeyemi. The video had been viewed 30 million times. News anchors debated his actions. Was he a hero for exposing betrayal or a villain for humiliating a woman publicly? Think pieces were written. Podcasts dissected every word. Social media split into camps. Team Kayode praised his courage. Team Zainab called him cruel for public humiliation. Neither side knew the truth. Kayode wasn't watching any of it. He'd been staying at Mama Aduni's Inn for 3 days, sleeping 14 hours at a time, waking to the sound of waves instead of traffic. The elderly innkeeper asked no questions, simply left meals outside his door and fresh towels in the bathroom. On the 3rd evening, she knocked. "Come sit with an old woman," she called through the door. The silence is good, but too much silence becomes its own kind of noise. Kayode emerged, looking nothing like the billionaire who'd graced magazine covers. Unshaven, wearing borrowed clothes that smelled of sunshine and detergent, his eyes hollow but no longer quite as devastated. They sat on the porch overlooking the beach, drinking tea as the sun set. "You ran from something," Mama Aduni observed. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, Ma." "Good. Running is wise when the house is burning. But eventually, you have to decide what to build from the ashes." Kayode looked at her. "What if I don't want to build anything? What if I just want to stop?" "Then you'll stop, and the world will continue without you." She sipped her tea calmly. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want anymore." "That's the first honest thing you've said since you arrived." She smiled. "The not knowing is where wisdom begins. You've spent your life knowing what to build, how to win, who to become. Now you have space to discover." "Discover what?" "Who you are when no one is watching, when no cameras are recording, when no woman is performing love for your bank account." Her voice was gentle but unflinching. "You gave your heart to someone who saw it as currency. That's painful. But the heart you have left, that's still yours." Kayode's throat tightened. "It doesn't feel like mine, it feels broken." "Good, broken things can be remade stronger." She stood, bones creaking. "Tomorrow, walk the beach. Let the water teach you what I cannot. And when you're ready, not when the world says you should be, but when you truly are, then decide what comes next." That night, Kayode finally turned on his phone. Hundreds of messages. Voicemails from his mother, his siblings, his business partners. Emails from lawyers, publicists, reporters. And one message that made him pause. From Tund. "Brother, I'm sorry for everything, for not trying harder, for walking away when you needed me. I should have fought for you. Please, when you're ready, let me know you're alive. I love you." Kayode stared at the message for a long time, then typed. "I'm alive. I'm sorry too. I should have listened. One day when I'm healed, we'll talk, but not yet, not yet." The next morning, he walked the beach as Mama Aduni had instructed. The sand was warm beneath his bare feet. The water rushed up to meet him, retreated, returned again, patient and persistent. And in a small cafe overlooking the sea, a woman with kind eyes and a writer's notebook looked up as he passed, then down at her page, then back up again as if seeing something unexpected. "Excuse me," she called out as he walked by. "Is this seat taken?" Kayode turned, and for the first time in days, felt something other than pain. Is walking away weakness, or the strongest revenge? "Is this seat taken?" the woman asked again, her voice carrying the kind of warmth that made strangers feel like old friends. Kayode looked at her properly for the first time. She was perhaps 30, with dark brown skin that glowed in the morning light, natural hair pulled back in a loose bun, wearing a simple yellow sundress that had clearly been chosen for comfort rather than impression. No makeup, no jewelry except small silver earrings, no performance. Just herself. "It's yours," Kayode said, gesturing to the empty chair at his small table. She sat, setting down her notebook, worn leather, pages thick with use. A writer's tool, not a prop. "Thank you, I'm Amara," she offered, not extending her hand for a shake, just giving her name like a gift freely given. "Kayode," he replied, then waited for the flicker of recognition, the subtle shift that always came when people connected his face to his name. It didn't come. "You're not from Ife Seaside," she observed, stirring honey into her tea. "No, just passing through." "For how long?" "I don't know yet." She nodded as if this made perfect sense. The best journeys are the ones without destinations. You just wake up each day and see where the current takes you. "You sound like you've done this before." "I'm a writer," Amara said with a slight smile. "We're professional wanderers. I go where stories call me." She paused. "What called you here?" "Escape," Kayode answered honestly, surprising himself. "From what?" "Everything." He expected her to press, to pry, to recognize that evasiveness meant there was a story worth extracting. Instead, she simply nodded. The sea is good for that. It doesn't ask questions, just witnesses and washes things clean. They fell into comfortable silence, drinking their tea, watching the waves. A seagull landed on the railing, tilting its head curiously before flying off. "Do you want to talk about it?" Amara asked eventually. "Whatever you're escaping." "I don't know if I can." "Then don't." She opened her notebook, began sketching, not writing, but drawing quick, confident lines that became the beach, the cafe, the morning. "But if you change your mind, I'm a good listener." Occupational hazard. And so began the strangest, most healing friendship Kayode had ever experienced. Days became weeks. Amara appeared at the cafe most mornings, and gradually, Kayode found himself timing his walks to intersect with her arrival. They'd sit together, sometimes talking, sometimes in companionable silence. She never asked about his past, never pushed for information, never treated him like a puzzle to be solved. She simply existed beside him, this woman who spoke like the sea, steady, patient, healing without trying. One evening, she invited him to walk along the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too beautiful to be real. "Can I tell you something?" Kayode said suddenly. "Only if you want to." He took a breath. 3 weeks ago, I was supposed to get married. I was standing at the altar and I walked away. Amara kept walking, her bare feet leaving prints in the wet sand. "Why?" "Because I overheard her, the woman I loved. She was laughing about me with her friends, calling me," his voice caught, "calling me a bush boy, saying she was marrying me for money, that I was too grateful to question her love." "That must have destroyed you," Amara said quietly. "It did, it still does some days." He stopped walking, looking out at the waves. "But the worst part? She was right. I was so grateful that someone from her world wanted someone from mine that I ignored every red flag. My best friend tried to warn me, and I threw his love away because I was desperate to believe in her." "You weren't desperate," Amara corrected gently. "You were hopeful. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, desperation is fear pretending to be love. Hope is love brave enough to be vulnerable." She turned to face him. "You gave someone your heart and they treated it carelessly. That's their failure, not yours." Kayode felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked tight since the vineyard. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Make pain sound like something survivable." "Because it is survivable, not easily, not quickly, but survivable." She picked up a smooth stone, turned it over in her hands. "My grandmother used to say, a pot that cracks can still hold water if you know how to mend it. The cracks become part of its beauty, proof it survived the fire." "Your grandmother sounds like mine," Kayode said with a small smile. "Wise women who have survived their own fires," Amara agreed. She handed him the stone. "Keep this. When you feel like you're drowning in what happened, hold it. Remember that you're standing on solid ground right now, that you survived." Kayode closed his fingers around the stone, its weight solid and real. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm broken." You're not broken, Amara said firmly. You're healing, there's a difference. The days continued to unfold with gentle simplicity. Amara taught him to sketch, though his drawings were terrible and made them both laugh. They cooked meals in Mama Adunni's kitchen, simple food that tasted better than any restaurant he'd frequented. They walked the beach at different times of day, learning how the same place could transform with the light. And slowly, carefully, Kayode told her his story. Not all at once, but in pieces. The childhood in motion, the climb from nothing to something, the loneliness of success. The way Zainab had seemed like the missing piece, only to discover she was a blade in disguise. Amara listened without judgment, without trying to fix him, without offering empty platitudes. "Do you hate her?" she asked one afternoon as they sat on the beach, watching children play in the shallows. Kayode considered the question. "No, I pity her. She's going to spend her whole life performing, never letting anyone see who she really is. That's a kind of prison worse than anything I'm feeling." "You've grown," Amara observed. "Have I?" The man who walked away from that altar was drowning in pain. The man sitting here now is learning to swim. She smiled. "That's growth." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," she said firmly. "I just happened to be here while you did the work. Don't give away credit for your own healing." Kayode looked at her, this woman who'd appeared in his life like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known he was praying. She was beautiful, but not in the performative way Zainab had been. Her beauty was in her steadiness, her wisdom, her refusal to be anything other than herself. And for the first time since the betrayal, Kayode felt something other than pain. He felt possibility. But before he could name it, give voice to it, his phone rang. A number he recognized. "Tund." "I should take this," Kayode said. Amara nodded, standing to give him privacy. Kayode answered, "Brother." "Kayode." Tund's voice was thick with emotion. "The world is waiting for you. Your company needs you. Your family needs you. And he paused, "I need to know you're coming home." Kayode looked at the sea, at the sunset, at Amara walking along the shore giving him space. "I'm coming home," he said quietly, "but I'm bringing someone with me." 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, Kayode Adeyemi returned to Abuja. But he returned different, changed. The headlines screamed his arrival. Billionaire resurfaces after viral wedding scandal, and Kayode Adeyemi breaks silence. His first public appearance was carefully chosen, not a press conference or TV interview, but the launch of something new. The Adeyemi Legacy Initiative, a foundation dedicated to supporting young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them not just funding, but mentorship, guidance, the kind of support he desperately needed and never had. "I built my company from nothing," Kayode said to the crowd gathered at the launch event, journalists, business leaders, young hopefuls with dreams in their eyes. "But I almost lost myself trying to become someone I thought I needed to be, someone acceptable, someone worthy of spaces I thought I didn't belong in." He paused, finding his rhythm. "This foundation isn't about creating more billionaires. It's about creating more authentic people who refuse to dim their light to fit into someone else's idea of success. It's about remembering where you came from and using that strength, not hiding it in shame." The applause was thunderous. And in the back of the room, Amara stood quietly, watching the man she'd met broken on a beach step fully into his power, not the power of wealth, but the power of hard-won self-knowledge. After the event, as guests mingled and networked, a figure approached Kayode. Zainab. She looked different, thinner, her eyes tired, her designer clothes somehow less impressive than they'd once seemed. The confidence that had armored her was gone, replaced by something desperate. "Kayode," she said softly, "can we talk?" Security moved to intercept, but Kayode raised a hand. "It's fine." They stepped into a quiet corner. Zainab's hands twisted together. "I'm sorry," she said, the words rushing out. "For everything. I was cruel and stupid and—" her voice broke. "You didn't deserve what I did, what I said. I was trying to be someone I thought I should be, and I destroyed something real in the process." Kayode studied her. The anger he'd expected to feel didn't come, just a distant sadness. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. Because, she swallowed hard, because watching you walk away that day was the first real thing I'd witnessed in my entire performative life. You were braver than I've ever been. What do you want, Zainab? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? No, she shook her head. I know we're done. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry. Kayode took a breath. I forgive you. Her eyes widened. What? Not for you, for me. His voice was steady. Because holding on to anger would mean you still have power over my life, and you don't, not anymore. Zainab's tears flowed freely now. Thank you. She turned to leave, then paused. The woman in the back, the one watching you like you hung the moon, don't let her go. She sees you the way I should have, but was too blind to recognize. Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd. Kayode returned to Amara, who'd been watching the exchange from a distance. Are you okay? She asked. Yes, he said, and meant it. For the first time in a long time, I actually am. She squeezed his hand. Good, because I have something for you. She handed him a small wrapped package. Inside was a sketch she'd drawn weeks ago on the beach, him sitting on the sand, looking at the horizon, the first hints of peace beginning to show on his face. Beneath it, she'd written, "The man who learned to breathe again." Kayode pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Stay, please, don't go back to your wandering yet. Amara smiled against his chest. I'm not wandering anymore. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Is forgiveness a gift to others, or to yourself? 6 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Kayode Adeyemi knelt on one knee. Not in a vineyard overlooking the sea with 400 witnesses, not with cameras rolling or orchestras playing, but in Mama Adeyemi's garden in Ife seaside, with only the ocean breeze and the elderly innkeeper watching from her kitchen window, pretending not to cry. Amara Akafer, Kayode said, his voice steady and sure. You found me when I was broken. You didn't try to fix me, you just sat with me while I learned to fix myself. You've never asked me to be anyone other than who I am. You've never treated my past like a trophy or my pain like entertainment. Amara's hands covered her mouth, tears already streaming. I don't have a ring that costs a fortune, he continued, opening a simple wooden box. I have this made by a craftsman in the village from wood that survived a storm. It's not perfect. It has cracks, but it's real, like us. The ring was beautiful in its simplicity. Polished wood inlaid with a thin band of silver, carved with symbols that meant strength and truth and home. Will you marry me? Kayode asked. Not in front of the world, not to prove anything, just because I love you, because you're my peace. Yes, Amara whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up into a kiss that tasted of salt air and new beginnings. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. Under an ancient oak tree on Mama Adeyemi's property, with the sea visible through the branches and the sun filtering through leaves like golden lace. 20 guests, Kayode's mother and siblings from Mushin, dressed in their finest, no longer feeling they had to hide who they were. Tunda's best man, his eyes bright with vindicated joy. A handful of Amara's writer friends. Mama Adeyemi in the place of honor, her weathered face glowing with satisfaction. No senator, no politicians, no social media influencers or business moguls trying to be seen. Just people who loved them, really loved them. The invitations had read simply, come if you believe in second chances. Come if you understand that the quietest love is often the truest. Come as you are. Amara wore a simple white dress she'd chosen herself. Cotton, comfortable, beautiful because she felt beautiful in it, not because it cost a fortune. Fresh flowers in her natural hair, bare feet in the grass. Kayode wore traditional Yoruba attire his mother had sewn, the fabric rich with ancestral pride. He no longer felt the need to hide. When they exchanged vows, there were no performances, just truth. I promise to see you, Kayode said, his voice thick with emotion. Every day, not the version of you that the world expects, but the real you, The one who sketches at dawn and talks to the sea and makes me laugh when I'm taking myself too seriously. Amara smiled through tears. I promise to remind you who you are when the noise gets loud again. To be your witness, your peace, your home. To love you not because of what you've built, but because of who you are when everything else falls away. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small gathering erupted in joyful ululation. Later, as the sun set and their guests shared food and stories, Kayode pulled Amara close. No regrets, he murmured against her hair. Not a single one, she replied. This, right here, right now, this is real. Everything before was just preparation for finding you. Mama Adunni approached with 2 cups of palm wine, her eyes twinkling. The ancestors are pleased. They sent you both storms so you'd learn to build on solid ground instead of shifting sand. She raised her cup. To love that survives silence, to hearts that break open instead of closed, to the courage to walk away from golden cages and toward honest truth. To truth, Kayode and Amara echoed. And under that oak tree, with the sea singing its ancient songs and the stars beginning to appear, 2 people who'd been broken by lies built something new from honesty. Not perfect, but real. And that made all the difference. Love that survives silence will outlive noise. The heart that breaks for truth is stronger than one that never breaks at all. Do you believe true love comes after heartbreak? Tell us your story below. Drop a red if this reminded you that walking away is sometimes the bravest choice. Where are you watching from? Share your location and let's build a community of truth tellers. This is TJ's story, where every ending is a new beginning. And the ancestors' wisdom guides us home. Subscribe for more stories that prove the quietest love is often the truest love.